Lilancholy. Warning: this book is meant for mature audiences and is filled with mature themes and imagery. Reader discretion is advised. Sensitive topics include abuse, trauma, violence, self-harm, depression, anxiety, and pet death. Lilancholy, A Guide to a Secret World. Writing by John Battle. Edited by Vi Huntsman. Layout by Micah Anderson. Introduction. Fairies want to have humanity, she said, so they take it from us. All the little things that pile up. When they want to take these things from us, we can play a game. Winner takes all. It's only scary if it's for real, so don't be afraid yet. These are the games she showed me. When we played them, she would say, "I promise to keep you safe. I promise to protect you." Then she would walk me through the rules. Sometimes she would hold my hand. "That part isn't necessary," she would say. She said these games came from Lilancholy, the world of fairies. "I'm going to show you the games. I promise to keep you safe. I promise to protect you. You can hold my hand if you want to, but it isn't necessary. To leave Lilancholy, close your eyes and say, 'It's not real. It's not real. It's not real.'" She said anywhere or any time could be Lilancholy. She said the fairies sometimes look like people who aren't quite real. She said that if you didn't know how to play the games, the fairies would be mad. She said they like to hurt people who made them mad. Sometimes it's hard to find Lilancholy. Sometimes it likes to hide, especially when it knows you're looking for it. Sometimes it likes to watch you struggle before the game so that you're easier to steal from. I found Lilancholy at my old playground. She let go of my hand and we made daisy chains to hang from the monkey bars. They made a curtain for us to walk through. She showed me Lilancholy under the covers. The lights were on, but we closed our eyes and counted down from 13. After 1, we said, "Ready or not, here we come." Lilancholy found me when I woke late at night. It was dark. The kind of dark that made my room look like someone else's room. There was a corner of darkness where a fairy waited to steal my name. We went to Lilancholy in the back seat. We were left in there while her mom ran an errand. It was drizzling. We breathed on the glass and wrote goodbye with our ring fingers. Then we closed our eyes and were there. "When I moved here, my old house went to Lilancholy," she said. "All old places are in Lilancholy. The fairies like the empty past." It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. She said it's good to have more than one name. It means we can lose more games. If you lose all your names, you lose yourself. She said flowers took the names of fairies, and the fairies made them smell good and be beautiful. She gave me the name Daisy. She said a fairy can never lie. She said it's okay to lie to them, but if they catch you, they get really mad. She would explain all of this better. I promise to keep you safe. I promise to protect you. You can hold my hand if you need to. And remember, it's not real. It's not real. It's not real. I saw the face in the closet. Almost mine, but glazed over and smiling. They came often, faces in the shadows. Usually she would be there to cover my eyes and keep me walking on, but I was in my bed, damp from fear that pinned my wrists to the sheets, and she was not there. It was only me and the face. My cat wandered the backyard, eating bugs and playing with the spiders. If I leaned my ear against the closet wall, I could have heard my father snoring. But the face was in the room with me, staring intently into my chest. Its hands sprouted fingers as long as my forearm and wrapped them around the closet door, pulling it shut ever so slightly, until only a slit of darkness remained. The face was hidden, but still there, trained on me. Its eyes outlined my skin, sending shivers down the backs of my arms. I thought about the face in the woods that peeked out from behind a thin tree. Its hands were similar, identical even. It wanted me to play a game, but she told it no. The face had snickered its ancient laugh and disappeared. She was worried, but told me I was safe now. She held my hand. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real, I muttered to myself, eyes stuck open, glaring into the crack of my closet. Please close your eyes, I thought. Please, please, please. Daisy, the voice whispered, like the words of a song. Daisy. It dragged my name around the room, then reached out eager to snatch it. The sweetest scent of peanut butter cups and a cold, cold glass of milk, beckoning me to step, step, step in front of its 7-jointed fingers. I wet the bed, overcome with embarrassment to the point of tears. The fairy in my closet chuckled, but kept its voice down. Stupid little Daisy, it whispered. Stupid little shit. I should have your father drown you in the bath. Then you can cry all you like. I believed it was capable of that, and more. Ever since moving into that house, my father's anger had been like never before. When I slept alone, I would often be fed night terrors of horrid things, of screaming and being locked away, of being starved, of being tied up and left out in the rain with the cat. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real, I whimpered to myself, forcing my eyes shut. I heard a shudder in the closet as the door sprang open the rest of the way, and I felt the hot breath of a serpent's tongue on my cheek. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. I repeated it until I awoke the next morning in my damp bed. Ways to enter Lilancholy. We found Lilancholy at the junkyard. The rusted cars made circles for us to stand in, and in them we were gone. Lilancholy found us the first time she spent the night at my house, our sleepover cut short by a game of flash thunder. We crawled under the house, and away we went. We searched for Lilancholy outside the school and followed a short brick wall all the way there. A fairy was trapped in a circle of mushrooms in the grass. Lilancholy trapped us in the smoke of my mother's cigarette, so stark and smelly in the rain. We took the umbrella and ran as it filled our lungs and tried to take control. I found Lilancholy in the trash cans out in the garage. A rat ran for the light as the 7-jointed fingers reached out from behind the corner shadow. Lilancholy took the old elementary school as it slid out of use. It pulled at the windows until they broke. It smashed itself with rocks. The building did what it could to escape, but it was too late. Spells. She knew how to cast spells. She knew the rituals and the dances. She knew when to bow and when to ask, pretty please. I will try to remember the spells she used. I will try to cast my own. I cannot be with you always, she said, and now I say it to you. I cannot be with you, but my words can be. Befriendship. Make a promise and spit in your hand. Shake on it. If the promise is broken, the befriendship is as well. She said the Fae believe a broken promise is a curse. I think the spit helps them find you. Control weather. This only works on cloudy days. She pulled me into the woods and up onto the highest hill. The wind whipped the tall grass against our legs. Scream, she said. When we did, the thunder answered. When you're close to the sky, it echoes you. Courage. When I was scared, she would take me to the creek and let me drink from her cupped hands. I don't think this was a spell, but it gave me courage. Destruction. If I die, she said, burn my books, because all memories fade. Disappearance. Close your eyes until you see red, the inside of your eyelids. Squeeze tight on that red. Feel it squish. Imagine a door in there, somewhere, and walk toward it. Breathe in with the left foot, out with the right. The doorknob is cold. Wait until it makes you shiver. When you open it, you will see nothing. Just emptiness. Step inside and vanish from your world. But do not shut the door, unless you wish to stay disappeared forever. Disguise self. So you want to be someone else, she said from up on the lowest hanging limb of her favorite tree. That's rather simple. You have it in you to be any version of you you want. It just takes the right thoughts. I told her I wanted to be a boy, and she chuckled. Easy enough. Close your eyes and find your boy self. It might be small or it might be mighty. It might hide somewhere afraid of the world, or it might be lurking inside every crack and crevice. Maybe you already found it and just aren't aware. But when you find it, ask it to come out and play. Come out and play, I said. I found him in the back seat of my mom's car. He was listening to something on his headphones, forehead to the glass. The road was curving wildly out the windshield, and the headlights only brought color to a scratch of the world. He was scared. I held out my hand and he took it, eyes focused on the blurring world outside the car. You're crying, she said, and caught one of my tears. That's all right. I never cast the spell after that. I never felt the need. Flee. Sometimes you need to run away, fast and far. Sometimes your legs are not enough. Sometimes you need magic. Sometimes, if you imagine you are far, far away, and you imagine it hard enough, the place will come to you and take you in its arms, lift you up above the place you are, beyond clouds and space. Sometimes it will lift you up and take you against its chest, and even if you are not there, it is there with you, and you are safe. Flight. She showed me how to fly, but I can only do it with her. Touch your fingertips to another's and suck in the deepest breath you can, until it aches, like your body is going to explode. Let the air lift you both up and into the air. You'll find that in Lilancholy, a flight will only last as long as a held breath. Gaze. You cannot cast this spell. It exists only inside of the Fae. This is a warning. Remember, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. If a Fae begins a sentence with, "Will you pretty please with sugar and cream and cherries on top?" what follows after will be your quest until you either complete it, win a game against them, or die. She didn't use that word often, but she took my shoulders and shook me to make sure I heard it. Die, 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 she said. Healing word. You can always say, "I love you," to someone close to you. A gift from you to them. If they return the love, the words become magic. She said, "I love you," and took my hand. I was too young, but still in love. The only difference between that love and an older love is the time it's allowed to grow and change. Our love never changed, never got the chance. But I loved her, and I said it out loud, and I saw her wounds scar before my eyes. And she loved me, and she said it out loud, and I cried. Sometimes when I say it to my older love, my mature love, the love that lays in my bed. It feels like I'm back in Lilancholy, in the blankets and back seats. I'm young, and I'm saying it again for the first time. To her. Illuminate. When it's too dark to see, hold your hand high above you. Reach for where the sun should be. Pluck it from the sky and carry the light with you. When it grows too hot and too restless, toss it up, up, and away. Knock and lock. The spell is the same no matter if you want to open something sealed or seal something open. Draw a key on it with your chalk to seal it. Erase the key to open it. Levitate. You can always levitate, she said, if only you believe. I watched her walk into the trees and begin to float. I followed her and the hem of her dress, flowing through the wind. I watched her, but I couldn't believe. Personify. The ocean had a voice once, before the Fae stole it. What voice would the ocean have? What words are the elk saying while they clack antlers? What songs do the trees sing in the wind? They are all speaking, always. Translate it and be their speaker. Polymerization. Two people can share a body, new, just for them. Lay or stand facing each other and lock eyes until the eyes lose shape and meaning. I feel it, she said, and so did I. Then we danced and let it create us, a deep well of embarrassment spilling over our head, a bonfire on a cold summer's night, sitting, chilly in the powdered snow, becoming one. Sometimes in the dark of my apartment, when my partner sleeps or is working the night shift, Lilancholy comes for me. We've moved into smaller and smaller places over the years, looking for something cozy, but in the back of my mind, I know I'm seeking somewhere it can't go. And still, it finds me. I'll awake from the most twisted of nightmares, screaming sometimes. The face and its 7-jointed fingers is there in the room, and I know it. I press myself against my partner, and sometimes my panic wakes them. They hug me back and hold me against their chest, their voice instinctive with an "it's okay," and other such small comforts. Those nights I don't want to go back to sleep. I close my eyes and see it all over again. If I start to fade, the dream wraps around me, picking up where it left off. So I go into the living room, make myself a bowl of cereal, and watch the television. A movie or something. It doesn't matter. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. Protection. Always carry chalk and draw circles, perfect, around that which you wish to protect. It's impossible for Faye to cross such unnatural shapes. She drew circles around us and we'd dance inside. We hugged and I lifted her up. We were safe. Repair. Break the limb from a tree and break it once more. Once more for each pain. With tape and glue and string, piece it together, that ragged limb. Make it loose and sloppy like all wounds, but make it whole again. Simulacrum. I was replaced, once. She dragged me into the woods and we were snagged. That other me was taller, smarter, dying faster. I watched it walk in my shoes, wear my clothes. I watched from somewhere else, over her shoulder. I watched, pulled back and unreachable. I was somewhere else. She dragged me into the woods and we were snagged, chained and strapped and left. The water rose and filled my nose. The thorns of the flowers scratched my skin, made me bleed. I was somewhere else, pulled close and inescapable. They will replace you and leave no trace, And you die a few times there, pulled back, unreachable, because it's a death to know you are replaceable, and it's another for it to go unnoticed. Sleep. Pretend to sleep. Lie to yourself about how nice it feels to be sleeping. Say, "Ah, isn't this so relaxing? I love sleep." Imagine all the nice little dreams in your head. Let them play out. Roll onto your side, roll onto your back. Get comfy. Imagine those little dreams and awake tomorrow. Speak with dead. Capture everything on film. Carry your camera always, for when something dies, it is gone and gone for good. But a thing captured is immortal. You look at the face of your father and you remember. You feel again. As you see the old fields, you are filled with something. You are filled with the dead. Speak to them. Hear their whispers. They are always there. Spider climb. Imagine the world rotating without you, so the floor becomes a wall and the walls become floors. Imagine all the things falling loose and crashing down, but you remain rigid. Now climb. Climb with your many limbs. Anywhere can be the floor if you demand it. Time stop. Call time out. To unfreeze time, call time in. Water walking. To walk on water, you must tidy up all the old boxes in your basement. They are stacked wrong and fallen over. They are filled with old clothes, tattered shoes, things you never need. Arrange them proper. Throw out the dead. Sweep the cobwebs and free the spiders. I was sitting in the garden. She was dancing, spinning little circles. I sipped her tea and she asked if I loved her. I said I did. Good, she said, and took my hand. Off we went into the brush and the trees, down the sloped ditch behind my house and up the other side. The line that defined the edge of the woods was never so visible, and as we crossed that barrier into another world, we heard that the river was up. The water was faster than ever before, and carrying with it the detritus of last night's storm. "Do you trust me?" she asked. Her eyes traced the circles under my own, but I could only stare out at the water. There was terror somewhere in there. I could see myself under the surface, flailing to survive. Her hand tightened its grip and she pulled me down the bank. A deer trail cut a line along where the dirt met the sand and silt, the seams splitting and parting like veins around tree trunks and obstacles. We leapt a fallen log, long rotten and full of worm homes, and skated around the 10-foot cliff of clay where the long grass leaned to watch the river. "Where are we going? Do you trust me?" She was vibrating, smiling. "You have to trust me or we won't make it." "I love you," I said, meaning to say trust, but she heard what she needed. "Oh, river," she yelled, "show us the way." And the river answered. We rounded a bend and the banks closed in on each other, the clay evolving into layers of slate rock and a little sandstone. She let go of my hand and climbed down the bank to stand on the platform of rock that stuck out like a dock. "This way," she said. At the bottom, we listened to the surge as it pushed against our purchase. Several large logs with fresh leaves still on the branches were clogged together at the narrowest part of the river, pushing against the slate on one side and digging into the clay on the other. She rushed to them and pushed against them with all her weight, but they did not budge. With trepidation, she stood on one and did a little jump. Then a big one. Still no movement. Despite the river narrowing, a full tree, roots and all, was needed to bridge its gap. I thought about grabbing at one of the green limbs and slipping free on the wet leaves, falling backwards or forwards into the current and being carried across state lines. They'd find my body far, far away. "Come on," she said, holding out her hand. I shook my head. "Don't you trust me?" She was still smiling. She knew, sometime in the future, probably very soon, I would say yes. It was a guarantee, seen deep in her crystal ball. I laid my hand in hers and we crossed the logs. Even the weight of both of us couldn't shift our path. It was like leaning against a tall tree and pretending you could topple it. At one point, my shoe caught a branch and I stumbled, but she caught me. Her hands on my sides transferred their warmth up to my face and cheeks. On the other side, she showed me where to put my hands and feet as we braved the wet clay. Every step we sunk up to our shins, and every pull sucked in our arms up to the elbow. But we were laughing, crawling on our bellies and howling at the yuck of it all. Tears were stinging my eyes, and we laughed harder at the fact we couldn't wipe them away. At the top, we trudged on until we found a stream that led into the large river, and we washed ourselves there. We soaked our shirts, then beat them against the rough bark of the tree until they were dry enough to wear again. With a rock, we scraped layers of mud off our jeans and rolled them up to our knees. Then we took turns howling up at the sky, trying not to laugh. "We're almost there," she said. She scooped some mud with a finger and made streaks under my eyes. "A warrior." Then she drew a line of mud down from her right eye to her jaw. "A traveler." I had no words to speak. "This way." She led me deeper into the woods, away from the sounds of the river and into an open field of sunflowers. "All the yellow in the world," she said, opening her arms to welcome me to this secret place. We ran through the tall stems, petals brushing our cheeks, the sky so blue and clean, only the brightest white circle in the sky. "This isn't all," she said. "There's a drain pipe on an old mining trail that's big enough we can walk through, and an entire hill of concrete, like someone tried to coat the whole thing with a big cement truck. It goes up to the gravel road behind the school, so we can maybe find a way in from there next time." She hugged me tight. We were somewhere in the field, deep enough that all we saw were tiny suns all around us. They rocked and swayed with the quiet breeze, and the leaves brushed against each other to create their own ambiance. I don't know if we kissed. Try as I might, I can't remember. If we didn't, we both wanted to. Or at least, I wanted to. We laid on our backs until the sun baked our wet clothes into rags, and then she led me to the mining trail. It was wide enough for a car, and led up and down the same creek that kept zigzagging in front of us like a coiled snake. There was a small pond, about as big as a house, just off the path. The rusting arm of a crane poked out from the water. If it was anything like the cranes I'd seen working on the highway, the pond had to be 50 feet deep. "Dad took me back here when he visited last weekend," she said. "He said that these holes were the mines they'd dig for coal, and that a lot of companies just tore up the minecart tracks and left everything else because it was worthless. He says this town's been dying ever since." The image of our entire town going to Lilancholy blurred the corners of my mind. Thinking about it now, I wish I had asked about her dad. I never got the full picture, but it fills the adult me with sadness. Maybe I had known as a kid that something was wrong. Maybe there are memories from our house that I chose to not forget. Sometimes now I'll remember things that seem so unbelievable, things that I try to convince myself were nightmares. The drain pipe is one of those things. She led me down the trail till we came to a seep, and sure enough, the drain pipe was 5 feet tall and running with water from the creek. The smell of copper and rust lifted from the mouth of it and into our faces, turning the air and the mood sour. It smelled like when I had pneumonia as a kid, and all the familiar foods I liked smelled off. She was the first to climb in, and what she saw stopped her in her tracks. "Run," she whispered, her eyes bug-like, arms and neck goose-pimpled. "What?" I got on my stomach on top of the pipe and leaned my head over to hear better. The pipe only ran the width of the trail, so maybe 10 feet at most, but looking down it, the other side stretched so far. Its construction went beyond the limits of our world. The light at the far side was but a pinprick, swallowing everything beyond our end in darkness. It's not real. It's not real. It's not. She was whispering, but her eyes were open, trembling. What is it? What do you see? I don't see anything. My eyes were adjusting, not quite there yet. The temperature difference on my face was chilling, stark against the sun that beat on the back of my calves and burned my skin through my shirt. A neck, she said. Bent in two, no, three places. No, not bent, jointed, like a finger. The face is staring right at me. You need to run, please, please run. I pushed against the pipe to stand, but my body was heavier, immobile. It spoke then. The neck, jointed in three places, somewhere in the shadows where I couldn't see, spoke. Rabbits, it said. Do you like to kill them? The voice was matter of fact as it pushed down the slimy walls of the pipe. One note. For fun. I kill rabbits for fun. They run, the rabbits. I kill rabbits for fun because they run. Close your eyes with me and say the thing. Say it with me, please. But she couldn't close her eyes, and neither could I. She felt further away from me then, as the voice of whatever sat in the shadows stuffed my ears with cotton. It's not real, she continued. It's not real, I muttered. Heavy words, blocks of stone, like slate rock breaking free and tumbling into the deep, deep water, grabbing at the leaves and falling face first. I saw it then, the neck. The joints articulated like the arms of my plastic dolls, stiff rubber coating an even stiffer ball and socket. As the neck craned itself in our direction, like it was facing the other way but just wanted its head to face us, I mimicked it, turning my head sideways and trying to bend in a direction that my neck didn't want to bend. I could feel it puppeting me, its eyes hooking into my own. I live here to kill them, the voice continued. We heard it move, two heavy boots on the metal. In the shadows, closer than we would have liked, four slender poles shifted with the sound, like it was turning around, but its body didn't make sense. I have one here. Would you like to see? It's not real, she said. Come on, say it with me, please. Please say it with me. I would like to see, I said, without wanting to. I saw feathers on the neck. Black crow feathers, slick with something crimson. No, 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 she said, beneath me. But her voice was going away. Bye-bye, I said, and waved to her in my mind. One of its four poles lifted, bending like a horse's leg. Two hands sat on its end, fused at the palm, each with 6 fingers that could bend any way they liked. The hands were wrapped around a fearful bunny rabbit. A finger around the neck, one draped over the scalp, another between the teeth as the rabbit bit down. The rest were interwoven with the fur. The furry ball of tail twitched every so often to show that it was still alive. Caught, but alive. I thought about how in animal documentaries, when the predator animal pounces, the prey animals scatter and run and are never more alive. Every ounce of energy is propelling them on the back of hopeful safety. But as soon as the tiger or the lion or the wolf catches the poor creature and takes it down, they go limp. They don't fight back. They aren't dead. They aren't even that injured yet. They just lay there and give up. The wolf nose nudges it and pokes at it, waiting for the other wolves to arrive. And the little doe remains still, resigned to its place in hell. Such a pretty thing, it said. There were 2 voices, I realized. One was just whispering underneath the monotone of the other. They don't come here. They don't. They don't come here on their own. The rabbits. She was gone. I was alone, hanging upside down into the pipe. I bring them here. The rabbits. I bring them here. The 3 poles that supported it shifted again. It took a step closer to me, so that they may see something new before they die. Another step closer. You've already seen here. You've seen it just now. Where would I take you, rabbit? Where would I take you to die? My mind was pushed full of images. Of the fused hands, all of them grabbing me and pulling at me. The strength of them so immense that one could crush my arm like it was Play-Doh. The bits and pieces of me slipping through its many fingers. Daisy! Her fingers gripped my hair as she pulled down with all her weight, tearing strands free. I felt blood. Say it, Daisy. Say it with me. Her voice was there again, right in my ear, and so scared. It sounded like my mom the night she hit a deer with me in the passenger seat. We were in town and it came out of nowhere, denting the hood and cracking the windshield into spider webs. She told me that she screamed like that because she thought, for an instant, that she hit a child. It's not real. It's not real, she said. I'll kill it, it said, pushing the rabbit forward. If you leave, it dies. You'll see it always. Shut up, she said. I have your name now, Daisy, it said. I'll make you see it when you close your eyes. I'll feed it to you for dinner. Don't listen, she said. Please, we have to go. Play a game with me, Daisy, it said. Play a game for the little rabbit's life. I knew it meant me. Or her. It meant us. It meant it would kill us both if we didn't play it in a game. If I win, you let it go, I said. She made a noise beneath me. If I win, I let it go, it said. I choose the game, though. The blood was going to my head as I hung over the lip of the pipe, my face a red painted over deep purple. I wanted to get down more than anything, but my body refused to move. Rock, paper, scissors, it said, and the fingers wrapped around the rabbit twitched individually. Daisy, please, it's just a rabbit. Okay, I said. Rock, paper, scissors. Perfect, it said, and pulled the rabbit back into the shadows. One of its other poles lifted from the pipe, and I heard its fingers flex. You're in the dark, she said. It's no fair if you can see us, but we can't see you. Oh my God, I thought. What are you doing? I don't want to see it. I don't want to see that thing. I don't want to see it. You're right, it said. We'll both go on the count of 3, but keep them hidden and reveal them at the same time. Sound fair? I nodded. She nodded. It snapped its fingers and made an excited noise. The rabbit squeaked from somewhere in the darkness. Ready, it said. 1, 2, 3. I slammed scissors down, hidden behind the roof of the pipe. It slapped something down as well, the sound trickling endlessly behind it towards some nebulous other side of the pipe. Now reveal, it said. Wait, she said. You should reveal first, since you're the host and you chose the game. That's not how the game works, and it's not very fair. Fair schmear, she said. We've already chosen our weapon. The game doesn't allow for us to change it now, so what's the harm? Be a good host. Little rabbits like to weasel, it said. Are you calling us liars? She took a step forward, stomping her foot against the metal of the pipe. It recoiled a bit. My heart was racing. I didn't know what she was doing, but I couldn't even open my mouth to say anything. I stared at the scissors in my hand and knew that I could die. I remember her grabbing my shoulders and shaking me, make sure I understood what the word die meant. No, it said. Apologies. Even rabbits run fair, even if they're tricksy. Apology accepted, she said. So reveal, host. Let us know our fates. It pushed another set of twisted and melded hands out of the shadows and in front of us. They were gripped tight together, fingers laced to form a rock. I felt my heart seize. Rock, it said. Now reveal. Very well, she said. She looked up at me. I think she saw us dying in my eyes because the color of her face washed into pale nothing. Go on, Daisy. Reveal. My hands shook, joints stiff and filled with stone. I didn't want to die. It didn't matter what else I was thinking then. Lots of things, I'm sure, but I didn't want to die. Looking back at it now, it was a very simple concept to grasp, and it feels like I made the decision as soon as it said reveal. Just a reaction. The flash and the thunder. I revealed a trembling paper. She let out a shaking breath and her knees buckled. It pulled its rock back into the darkness. Very well, it said. Best 2 out of 3. No, she said. That wasn't the deal. We won fair and square, so we're leaving. With the rabbit, I muttered. With the rabbit, she said. No fun, it said. The rabbit hit the pipe feet first and ran towards us with speed. She caught it and hoisted it up to her chest. It was brown and chubby, with puffy cheeks and whiskers that were constantly twitching. It's not real, she said. I said it with her, finally able to close my eyes. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. We walked back down the mining trail. She kept hold of the rabbit. I could feel the sunburn taking shape on the backs of my calves and neck. It was red hot and made my skin uncomfortable. Did you really pick paper? We stopped somewhere. I think we were out of the woods at that point. Yeah, I said. Yes, I said. Maybe I died hanging from that pipe. She put the rabbit on the ground and it ran away. Games. 1,000. Only a human can challenge a fairy to a game of 1,000. The challenged fairy must then count to 1,000 Mississippi without slipping up or losing their place. They may take as long as they want, but the human can interfere vocally or emotionally. They cannot attack or physically touch the fairy while counting, or the fairy automatically wins. Bloody Knuckles. The game is simple. A human and a fairy stand facing each other. They may sit if they want. They both hold up their balled fists. Back and forth they punch against each other's knuckles until blood is drawn. Whoever bleeds first loses. Button Button. This game is played between a fairy and at least 2 humans. The humans challenge the fairy to guess which of them holds the button. This can be a real button, a coin, or any other trinket that can fit in your palm. The fairy turns away and doesn't peek for 10 seconds, while the humans hide the button between them. After 10 seconds, the fairy turns and makes their guess. If they guess correctly, they win. If they guess wrong, the humans win. Capture the flag. A fairy steals a human away from 2 different groups of friends. Each group is given the stolen human of the other group and is given 2 hours to hide them. This hiding spot is called their base. Afterwards, the fairy begins their game. Each team must search the town for their stolen friend while also defending their base. The first team to secure and return their stolen friend back to their own base wins, and their stolen friend is returned to consciousness. The other team loses their stolen friend to the fairy. We were older, and I had forgotten about it. I hadn't seen her since she moved away, but there she was, in the mall parking lot. You've got tattoos, she said, taking my wrist and reading them up my arm. The dog, the slipknot, the many, many broken teeth. The world around us was gray with autumn fog, and Lilancholy came with her, lurking from her shallow breath. The tree, its limbs twisted to watch me. The after-movie crowd from the theater vanished. Those who left the doors the same moment I did were no longer tangible. In the parking lot, it was just her and me, and all the things that searched for me. We rode our bikes to the park and sat on the swings. I forgot what day it was and was thrust further and further into a receding past with each pump of my legs. I knew that one strong kick would be all it would take to send me up, 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 and back down into somewhere else. She watched carefully, sitting still, her feet pressed into the gravel. St. Mary's clock tower struck across the way, though I knew it wasn't 6 o'clock. I have to work tonight, I said. Oh, she said. Let's go then. We pedaled past the junior high. I remembered when her mom took her out of class for the last time. Her mother was wrapped in a business suit, but her hands were a mess, her face swollen and smeared. She waved goodbye as she was pulled from the room. My mom sat me down that night during Rugrats and told me they were gone. They moved, she said. I don't know why. Her house and everywhere we'd been went to Lilancholy in an instant. So many places I had avoided over the years, without ever knowing why, which had faded into the background as I grew older and hit puberty, and knowing then it was because of her. Down the road and through the cul-de-sac where the Brittnys built their new house, surrounded by all the corn, where I kissed my first girlfriend. She ditched her bike and some brush and walked towards the woods. I have to work, I said. So? She looked back at me and I felt an odd pressure. Melancholy. These are my work pants, I lied. They were just jeans, but I didn't want to change. I didn't want to go into the woods. It rained the day before, and I knew my shoes would be caked in mud. I knew I would slip and go knee first into a puddle. I knew she would take me somewhere I couldn't come back from. She shrugged and hiked further in, leaving me there in the grass. All sound bled back into my ears, and the world unpaused. Lilancholy left. I haven't seen her since. That day, I rode down to her old house and realized how small it was. Several families had moved in and out since she lived there. I thought about laying in the living room, feeling that thick carpet on my back, the stains that were forever sticky. I thought about the couch and how it grew in length when we were upset with each other, but how it shrunk us together when we were scared. I wanted to knock on the door, to ask if I could come in. I wanted to see it again. One last time, I told myself, but I couldn't. They would have thought I was a freak or dangerous, so I pedaled down the alley and along the chain-link fence that squared around the backyard. The grass was mowed shorter than I had ever seen it. There was a patio with deck chairs and an umbrella. The circle of stained ground where the inflatable pool used to be was gone. In the dangerous corner near the edge of the yard, just along the fence, where the grass used to be taller than us and I'd cut my knee on a piece of glass, was a slide for kids with a little swing attached. Everything, all at once, made sense. But the image didn't make me cry until I got to work. I was unloading bottles of soda pop into the fridges, and in the cold room I shuddered and wished to hold her hand again. Coin flip. The fairy will present a coin and ask you to check it for any tampering. A lick will dispel most illusions. A bite will confirm it's dead. The fairy will flip the coin into the air, and the human must call out a side of the coin before it lands. That is their side. The opposite side belongs to the fairy. After the coin has landed, the side facing up is the winning side. Interference occurs when the coin hits anything but the ground on the way down. You must call out interference as it happens, or it doesn't count. If there is an interference, the coin must be reflipped. Cover up. There was a storm once, and we ran out into the field. The corn was tall and scratchy. Thick raindrops pelted us like 1,000 fingers pressing into our skin. I tried to lose her in the rows, but she was always there nipping at my heels. After one long and loud roll of thunder, she called out, "Cover up." We dove into the mud and dug in as deep as our hands and the soil would allow. The rain puddled in the hole, making it easier to scoop out clump after clump. We were trying to see who could coat themselves in it first. Damn the clothes. Damn the shoes. We just needed mud, head to toe. It was one of the few games I could beat her at. There's a crack in my heart. I saw it on an X-ray. She laid me down on the operation dining room table and ran her X-ray banana over my chest. "Ouch," she said. Before I could respond, she rushed out of the room to my mom's printer and made whirring noises with her mouth. "Ouchie, ouchie," she yelled again. I craned my neck to see what she was doing, but all I saw was the empty doorframe leading into my mom's office. We were alone that day. I remember having the house all to ourselves. "This is not good," she said. She ran back in and held up the printer paper to the ceiling fan light. On it, in crude red pen, she had scribbled a heart, cartoonish proportions. "See that?" She pointed to the scribble. "No," I said. "It's a crack." "What?" "A crack. Your heart has a crack in it," she said. "Wait, really?" "This is no laughing matter, patient," she said. "Do you feel any discomfort?" Her hand was cold on my chest, palm up, then palm down, like I was a scalding doorknob hiding a fire. "No," I said, but I did. A little. The tiniest thing somewhere in my chest. Well, what? I guess I do feel something." I knew it. She peeled and bit into her banana. "My instruments never lie. It's a crack, isn't it?" She pressed down on my chest a little hard. "No," I said. "I don't know. I don't know what a crack feels like." "Imagine you're a sidewalk." "A sidewalk?" "Mm-hmm." She checked my temperature with her hand and shook her head. "Fever of 103. Not good. Definitely a crack." "I don't know what a sidewalk feels like." "Well, sidewalks are walked on all the time and they get cracked because no one takes care of them." "The school has a new sidewalk." "Yeah, a new one. The old one got destroyed and thrown away." "Oh," I said. "So just feel like that and you'll know what a crack feels like. Or like a nutcracker. Maybe a nutcracker is best." "I think my mom has one of those," I said. She shook her head and looked at her x-ray printout again. "How do we fix it?" I continued. "Fix it?" "Yeah," I said. "The crack." "Cement, I guess. I'm a doctor, not a heart expert." If I close my eyes, I can see what she saw. My therapist does this thing where I have to visualize my body, feel my fingers, my toes, my arms, my torso, and I close my eyes and I imagine these things as I feel them, what they look like. I notice twinges and pains and good feelings. We do this every other week during our sessions, and as we do, sometimes we find something. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes I find something and I don't tell her. Like the crack. I feel it when I close my eyes, and I think about my heart. I feel it in my chest, the muscle and the pressure and the pumping. Hear it in my ears. I trace along the veins and the mucus, and there I find a spot that is missing. Just a crack. I don't tell her because I don't know what to say. I'm afraid she'd want to talk about it, and I don't want to. I had a weak spot in my tooth as a kid, and I'd probe at it with straws and anything else I could shove in my mouth. I didn't tell my mom because, I don't know, it was nice to have a secret. It was nice to poke at it. One day it started hurting when I poked it, and from then on the hurting only got sharper and more. My mom noticed when I cried out after poking too deep, when I cried and kicked in the back seat. I had dug too far, and it was impossible to ignore any longer. She took me to the dentist. I think they fixed it with cement. Daisy chain. A daisy chain is a chain of daisies, flowers tied together by the stems. You can make crowns and bracelets. You can make necklaces and anklets. But to play daisy chain, you must create a longer daisy chain than the fairy that challenged you. This fairy goes until one party surrenders or a daisy chain breaks. Draw a bike. A human can challenge a fairy to this game as long as there is not a bike present. The fairy must draw a bike from memory to the best of their ability. It is then compared to a real bike. If it is not identical, the fairy loses. Finger soldiers. This game starts when a human holds their hand behind their back, hiding it from a fairy, and asks, "How many fingers am I holding up?" The fairy cannot peek. The human can hold up as many fingers as they like, even 0. The fairy gets one guess but can take as long as they like. Fire jar. We killed fireflies. Tons of them. We took our wiffle ball bats out into the tall grass in her backyard and whacked streaks of starlight through the air, each one making a tiny thunk as we killed and murdered our way across the yard. I don't know why we did it. I couldn't tell you, but we did it. Relentless, thoughtless, and cruel. We were introduced to Fire Jar by a fairy on the playground. We were playing Foursquare on the blacktop behind the quarantined elementary school during the summer, and we heard it in the grass. Its limbs were thin, flexible branches, feathered in green leaves that were slowly dying. When it sat still, it looked like the wreckage left behind by a storm, just a pile of detritus waiting to be mulched. It wanted the way her eyes lit up when she smiled at something genuinely funny. Jealous of that, it said, its voice the rustling of dead leaves inside the tangle of branches. When it walked, it moved like a pterodactyl or a bat, wing-like greenery folded to the side, little clawed twigs in the dirt pulling its slender branched body behind it. The head was hard to discern, but the voice came from the front and center, where leaves overlapped and moved together as if one solid object. She was feeling playful and agreed to a game. I stayed out of it. Fire jar, it said. Catch all the light you can in a jar, lid on, and bring it back here by the same time tomorrow. That evening we tried a few things, but none worked. We didn't have an extension cord that would stretch all the way from her house. A fire would burn out quickly when we closed the lid, and we weren't allowed to play with the lighter anyways. We'd have to steal it and risk getting caught by my mom. If we used a bunch of glow-in-the-dark stickers, we'd have to hope it was cloudy, and even then, they're only really bright when you cup your hands over them. So we caught fireflies, scooped them from the air in our palms, swung the jar at them. We got as many as we could and returned to the blacktop. Inside the fairy's jar was a tiny white stone that lit up when you shook it. It was no brighter than a weak beam from a dying flashlight, and only stayed lit for about a second. We showed it the jar of fireflies, crawling on the insides of the walls, hanging from the lid, munching on the tiny leaves we stuffed at the bottom. It made a noise like a cat's purr, excited by the tiny insects. I love bugs, it said. We can trade, she said. Your rock for the fireflies. It thought for a moment. And we can call the game a draw? She nodded and held out the jar. The trade was made, and the pile of leaves opened the jar and dumped the fireflies upon itself. That night, I stared out the window into the backyard, wondering if the blinking greens and yellows of the fireflies were the fairy. We were eating some oatmeal on my bed and watching television. They don't all want to hurt us, she said. Not that they're nice or kind. They just don't care if we get hurt either. Hurting us is just like a thing. I don't even know if they know they're doing it. Or I guess I don't know if they realize that when they do it, it's bad. Huh, I said. As long as we don't give them a reason to hurt us, they're mostly harmless. Mostly harmless, I said. Like a tiger, she said. If you don't poke a tiger, it really doesn't have a reason to bite you. Unless it's hungry, I said. She said. Yeah, I guess. Unless it's hungry. Flash Thunder. This game can only be played at night. It requires one fairy and as many humans as you'd like. The humans are given 1 full minute to hide anywhere in the designated space. Could be the woods, a field, or someone's home. After which the fairy calls out flash as loud as they can. Each human must respond with thunder. The fairy then follows the sounds to find the hiding humans. The fairy gets 3 flashes to use while searching. Any humans who are found lose the game. Those that remain hidden after all 3 flashes are spent win. This is the first game we played. The first she showed me. I had just moved to town and she had befriended me over my Pokemon shirt. She was quick to ask for a sleepover, and I was just excited to have a friend. My mom took us for spaghetti at a mall restaurant, and then we rented some movies from the family video. She showed me the game that night. We laid in bed next to each other, whispering about this or that, things I couldn't remember if I tried. That was the first time I saw a fairy. It was the first time I went to Lilancholy. Floor is lava. This game begins when a fairy claims the floor is lava. Everyone only has a moment to get off of the floor and up onto the furniture around them. Anyone left on the floor is considered dead and loses the game. The goal of the game is to get from where you started to wherever the fairy is. Those who make it are the winners. It's possible for no one to win this game. Follow the rainbow. This game is played by a group of humans trying to locate a fairy. To begin, the person wearing the most colorful outfit must find an object in the world that is red. Everyone must agree it is red. If they can't, they forfeit their turn and the next person goes. After a red object is found, continue down the rainbow collecting an object of each color: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. The game cannot end until all 7 objects are collected. When the game ends, you will find the fairy you seek. Foot race. A human can challenge a fairy to a foot race, but the fairy determines the finish line. They can choose anywhere that they can see. Any number of humans can choose to participate after the finish line is designated. Everyone lines up at the starting line, and the challenging human does the countdown. They can call 3, 2, 1, go, or ready, set, go, but any other deviation must end with go. This is the marker for the start of the race. A tricky countdown might feature the human saying random words, trying to get the fairy to jump off the starting line and be disqualified. But after go is called, the first to reach the finish line wins. Ghosts and grave robbers. This game is played between a fairy and a group of humans. It can only be played in a graveyard. The fairy counts up to 30 while the humans hide within the graveyard. When they finish counting, the fairy must quietly stalk the graveyard, searching for the humans. When a human is found, they join the fairy and search for the others. If the fairy finds everyone, the fairy wins. If the fairy doesn't find every human, the humans win. Hide and seek. I hid above the towel closet for too long. My father came home and was furious on my mother's behalf. "Penny, come out this instant." His voice bellowed through the tiny house. I didn't know where she was, only that she had run into the basement. It had been nearly an hour, and I was worried. "I mean it," my father continued. He was yanking cabinets open and slamming them shut. I think my mother was crying. I didn't understand. As much as I didn't want the fairy to find me, I didn't want my father finding me either. I couldn't tell you which would be worse. "Penny, please." My mother was close. I don't know how they knew I was hiding. Perhaps the fairy told them. Or perhaps it was throwing their voices around, trying to lure me out. I hugged my knees to my chest and whispered to myself, "It's not real. It's not real. It's not real." Then my father opened the cabinet. I was high up and didn't remember how I got there. Nothing was kept in such a way-up cabinet. I swore I would be safe. My father's face was twisted and snarling like a pig's, blood gushing around his cheeks and eyes, puffing him up and coloring him red. His eyes were filled to bursting. With a yank, I was thrown out of the cabinet and down to the carpet closet floor. My wrist shot with pain. I cried out, but my father's voice surrounded me, filling the room with sound. "What the hell were you doing up there? Didn't you hear your mother calling for you?" With a quick movement, he had me bent over his knee. I felt like one of my dolls, my hair hanging over my face and eyes. He whacked me hard with his belt and yelled to cover my scream. "Please, John," I heard my mother say. I looked up. My mom was there, and she was next to her, covered in dirt from hiding in the basement crawl space. She was always dragging me down there. Her eyes were big moons sinking below the waves, while my mother's face was pinched in worry. My father gave her a look before shutting the door between us. He hit until I stopped yelling, and then hit once more. I felt the fairy creeping behind me, blade-like fingers scratching through my hair. I knew it was controlling him. I knew my father would never hurt me. Not like that. Hopscotch. To play this game, draw 10 squares on the ground and number them 1 through 10. The squares should be attached to form a line. Some of the squares can be side by side, but not all of them should be. Different people will draw their hopscotch differently. Once it's drawn, the fairy who challenged you must produce a stone or some similar marker. Each person takes a turn tossing the stone into the squares in numerical order, 1 first, 2 second, and so on. Hopping to the stone, without falling or stepping out of the lines, and hopping back to the start. The goal is to make it all the way to the 10th square and return safely. Horse. Horse is a basketball game, so you need a basketball and a hoop. It needs at least 2 players, but any more than 4 becomes confusing. Each player takes a turn calling a shot and then making that shot. If they call a shot and can't make it themselves, they forfeit their turn to the next person. After making the called shot, each other player has to make the same shot or score the next letter in their horse. H, O, R, S, and E. If you score all 5 letters, you lose. If you make the called shot, you score no letters and continue playing. The game continues either until there is 1 loser or only 1 winner. That choice must be decided before the game fully begins. House. She was sometimes the dad of our little house in the tree. She would puff out her chest, fold her arms, and huff and gruff and puff, walking around with big, clopping steps. She would say things like, "Where's my dinner?" and "The clouds are big today," and she always tucked her shirt in. One time she stood up from our meal of plastic food on tiny Barbie plates and said, "I can't live like this anymore. I'm not some kind of animal." And she went to the corner and stood facing it while I laughed. Sometimes she was the baby and she'd kick and scream in the most annoying voice until I gave her a bottle. Sometimes she'd tell me to be the dad and she'd climb on my back. Sometimes she was the mom and she'd pretend to smoke. I remember she stole a pack of my mom's cigarettes, because her mom didn't smoke, and hid them in the treehouse. She would put them unlit in her mouth and flick her thumb as if her hand was a lighter, and her thumbs up was the flame. She'd suck on it really hard, like a vacuum, and then spit. Refreshing. One time she lit one for real. I don't know how she got the lighter, but she lit it and sucked on it and coughed up black smoke. She threw the cigarette on the ground and stomped on it like my mom did. Pressure from the toe of the shoe and twist. How does your mom do that? She licked her palm, trying to get rid of the taste. I don't think I like her anymore. But she still came over. She still liked to sit in the front when we went on car trips to the mall. And my mom seemed to like her too. My mom was never very talkative. I really only remember bouts of anger, the smell of smoke, and her picking me up from daycare. To my childhood, that's all she was. But my mom would make small talk with her. My mom would call her a second daughter. She was always welcome to spend the night. Maybe my mom knew something I didn't at the time. I remember meeting her father for the first and only time. I had my hair short, and he thought I was a boy. The first thing I heard him say was him yelling up at us in the treehouse. "Oh, no, you don't," he said. He said some words that hurt now to remember, even if I can't make out their syllables. I think he called me something or called her something worse. I felt tiny and in danger. "Daisy's my friend," she said, and he seemed to get it. He smelled of motor oil, but not the kind my dad smelled like when I would hug him. Her father smelled of kerosene, and what I now know is whiskey. He apologized, and his eyes drooped, and he just kept apologizing. "You don't need to tell your mother," he said. "I was just stopping by and wanted to see you." They went inside and left me in the treehouse. "Just 10 minutes," he said. So I sat and cleaned up our plastic meal, washed our plastic plates in the plastic sink with our plastic bar of soap. I sat in the chair and pretended to read the paper. I was the dad that day. I played with the dolls who had long lost their clothes, and some of the limbs were the wrong shade of pink. I don't know how long they were gone, but they didn't come back. I left, feeling embarrassed and out of place. I spy. This game begins when a fairy declares, "I spy with my little eye something," and then names a feature about an object they can see. This can be abstract. I spy with my little eye something sad. Or literal. I spy with my little eye something green. Each human gets one guess as to what the object is. Afterward, if no one guessed correctly, the fairy gives them another clue. If the humans cannot guess the current object with 3 clues, the fairy wins. Jenga. This game requires 54 identical blocks, each one longer than it is wide. They are stacked into a tower in rotating layers of 3. Each player takes a turn removing a block and stacking it at the top of the tower. There are only 2 rules. You can only use one hand to remove a block, and 2, you can't remove blocks from the top 5 layers of the tower. If a fairy knocks the tower over, they have to leave you alone. If a human knocks it over, the fairy wins and claims their prize. Keep your candle lit. This game is played between a fairy and a human. It requires candles, matches, or flashlights. Any light source will do, as they all burn out eventually. The fairy and the human light their lights at the same time, and whoever keeps theirs going the longest wins. She went on a trip and left me with a candle. Had her mom swing by before they left. Said she'd be gone for a few days, wouldn't say where. But she gave me this candle, already lit, and told me to keep it lit. I told her about the many, many goldfish who had died under my care, but she had to go. Left me in the yard with the glass jar and burning wick. I must have slept with it still lit because I remember giving it back to her, still going. Burnt almost down to the bottom of the jar. She wouldn't tell me where she went, but she looked tired. Killing jar. I spent a weekend catching bugs for a fairy that wanted my cat for its killing jar. My cat was a tabby, only 4 years old, and she would roam the backyard for bugs. Sometimes she would get out and I'd see her in the alley looking for other cats. There were lots of loose cats back then. I begged my mom to let her stay inside, but my dad didn't want her scratching the furniture. So she could only stay inside when I was home, and only in my room. Every time I came home and she wasn't in the backyard, I'd hope she wasn't dead. Cats get hit by cars all the time, my dad said. Stupid animals. I don't know why they bought her for me if they hated her, but she was mine and I didn't want her to die, and I definitely didn't want her in a killing jar. The fairy showed us what it would look like. It had a big glass container in the trunk of a rotting tree. Inside the container, 7 beautiful butterflies were pinned up, wings spread. The fairy said it would get a bigger container for my cat and pin it up just like the butterflies. But first it would stuff her in a jar with a rag of poison so she would suffocate and choke until she died, but her body wouldn't be all mangled from claws. It's important that the body is intact, it said. In order to keep my cat safe, we had to get some more bugs for its collection. It wanted a dragonfly, a bee, a wasp, and 2 more butterflies that were different than the 7 it already had. I never saw my cat die. One day I came home and she wasn't there. This was 2 years after the killing jar incident, but I still wondered if some other fairy had gotten a hold of her. I'd awake from nightmares of her in a jar, suffocating. I could smell the poison the fairy used. It was so strong and pungent. I'd cry about it to my mother, but she told me to suck it up. It's just a cat, she said. They die all the time. I didn't get another pet until a few years ago. When my partner moved in, she brought with her a chubby brown cat with blue eyes. Whenever my mom visits, she pets him and babies him like he's her grandchild. Nothing makes Lilancholy feel more real than that. Left or right? This game requires a piece of paper and a writing utensil. A human challenges a fairy to guess if they are left-handed or right-handed. To do this, the fairy turns their back while the human writes left on the left side of the page and right on the right side of the page. The trick is that they must write both words at the same time. Then the fairy gives their guess. Marble jar. A jar is filled halfway with marbles and sat on a table. Any number of humans and fairies can play this game. Each player writes on a piece of paper how many marbles they think are in the jar. Then the marbles are counted, and the player whose number is the closest without going over wins. Maze race. This can be played with a real maze made of hedges or hay bales, or it can be played by printing mazes on sheets of paper. Either way, the players, 2 or more, no teams, each attempt to get through the maze first. If on foot in a physical maze, everyone starts at the entrance and is released at the same time. Alternatively, you can let each person take their turn separately, timing them and comparing afterward, though this takes more time. If on paper, everyone gets the same maze printed on their own sheet of paper. A pencil or pen must be provided for them. When the game begins, your writing utensil must hit paper and cannot leave until you reach the end. Lifting it beforehand is equal to skipping over a hedge and is grounds for disqualification. At the least, the person should restart the maze from the beginning. You can cut ribbons from your arms and never find enough blood to be rid of them. She told me this one day. We were 9 and laying on her living room floor, legs thrown up on the couch, watching the TV upside down. I didn't understand, so I asked her what she meant, and she repeated herself and then asked if I had ever harmed myself. On purpose, she added, not on accident. I shook my head, confused. She told me Lilancholy has been with her since ever, that it followed her from house to house. Her mom never saw it, never noticed a thing. The fairies would creep in through open windows or dark corners and tease her. They'd sit close to her bed while she clenched her eyes, and they'd whisper things to her. They called her ugly a lot. Beauty is so important to fairies, she said. So you know they mean it when they say things like that. Sometimes, before they'd leave, they'd make her hurt herself. A slap on the face. Hard, though, not a wimpy one, but a nice, hefty slap that would leave a mark. They'd make her punch her thighs, leaving welts in their wake. They cheered and clapped for this. They loved it and would let her sleep when she was done, when they were satisfied. I'm writing this now from the safety of a sunny cafe, but even still the darkness of these words hurt me, and just now the silliest idea crossed my mind. The thought that maybe this was part of Lilancholy. This pain was part of their game. The pain of realization. Knowing now so many more things about life and people than I could have contained at that age. The pain of a sort of survivor's guilt. I think about her and feel horrible for the life she had. For the utter confusion that she had to make sense of. She might be somewhere right now, happily married and with kids. This might all be a distant memory, faded and still fading, much like my own memories until just recently. Perhaps she sits and remembers these talks, or maybe there's just this hole where her childhood was. I don't know which would be better. She never showed me any cuts. I don't know if she ever did cut herself. I think the purpose of her saying that to me, that you can cut ribbons from your arms and never find enough blood to be rid of them, was more of a warning. That there's nothing I can do to escape. You just have to face it. Maybe her mom said it to her. Maybe that's where she heard it. I wonder if her mom's alive still and visits her wherever she is. I wonder if, like me, Lilancholy returns when her mother does. Her mom would be older and more mellow now, remarried perhaps. Maybe we both sit at the same time in different places and look at our mothers, remembering the truth that is buried behind all those years. I wonder if she thinks of me. I'm guilty of not thinking of her. For a long while, I forgot she was a real thing. Never crossed my mind. Her face was all but gone. The whole reason I started writing this was that I visited my mom and saw that part of the woods she walked into and disappeared. It gave me such a sick feeling, like a wad of mud and bones were being pulled up from the depths of my gut. The woods were cold and barren from the winter. I imagined myself walking in and finding the old mining trail, following it to the drainage pipe and looking inside. Maybe she did the same and walked to the other side of that pipe, entering Lilancholy for good. Maybe she didn't have a family somewhere, and maybe she didn't see her mom. Maybe she went to the other world and became a fairy. Maybe she's the reason these memories came back. Maybe she's the thing that lurks in the dark corners of my apartment. Maybe it's my fault for loving someone and letting them go. Would she have led me to that pipe back then? Was that what she was trying to do? Did she want me to go with her and disappear? I could see her in the fictitious part of my brain, suffering for those years under her mom, being plagued by melancholy. I could see her crying and thinking of me, missing me, growing so desperate that she makes the trek from wherever she moved to, back to that town, tracking me down and trying to make a clean start, all for me to say no and let her disappear. Maybe she went into those woods, found the pipe, and that thing grabbed her with its fused hands and killed her. Maybe the last thing she heard was it whispering, "Run, rabbit, run." Mother, may I? A fairy will challenge a group of humans to this game if it catches you all out at night. Most of the time, it's because you're somewhere you know you shouldn't be, but it could also be just 'cause. A fairy's methods often have no meaning behind them. Meaning is human, and thus fairies are not born with it. The players line up shoulder to shoulder, 20 feet opposite the fairy. The fairy then calls out a player and gives them an instruction on how to approach, such as, take 2 giant leaps, or slither like a snake for 5 seconds. The player must say, "Mother, may I?" And then the fairy responds yes or no. If yes, the player must approach as instructed. If no, the player must stay where they are. If a player forgets to ask, "Mother, may I?" then they are returned to the starting line and must start again. If a player steps when it's not their turn, they are returned to the starting line. If a player doesn't follow the specific instructions, they are returned to the starting line. The first player to reach Mother wins. The others lose. Musical chairs. This game is played between 10 humans. The fairy gathers 9 chairs and organizes them in a perfect circle, seats facing out. The game begins when the fairy begins to sing. The humans must walk around the circle of chairs at an even pace. When the fairy stops singing, the humans must find a seat. The one who isn't able to get a seat is removed from the game, along with a chair. Repeat this process until there is only one chair and only one human sits in it. They are the winner. No breathing. This game is hard. I hate it. You and a fairy sit facing one another and suck in a big gulp of air. First to breathe, in or out, loses. Did you ever play that game in computer class? The one where you and your friends are on AIM or MSN or Skype and you hold your breath and press down on a key at the same time, usually the period or the X, and you hold it down until you let go of the breath. Have you played that? It's one of those things that I've asked every one of my adult friends and relationships. It feels so universal, but most don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Most of them didn't have a computer class because they knew more about computers by the time they were in junior high. It makes me feel old. This whole book makes me feel old. I've tried writing it so many times over the years, spurred on by a particularly bad nightmare, 7-jointed fingers grabbing at my sheets, or a rogue bout of melancholy. I'd sit and write 1,000 words or so and then just leave it. Forget about it the next morning. like the memories themselves were breathing in and out on much older rhythms than mine. The closest I got was when I turned 30. I looked for her online. I had the damnedest time remembering her name. I didn't know what to type, so I just scrolled and scrolled through old posts, friends lists of old friends. I even got a phone book from my mom's place, made the trip by train, and stayed in my old room for a few days, laying on an inflatable mattress in the mess and dust, staring up at the piece of silly string that had hardened into a fossil amongst the speckled ceiling. The glow-in-the-dark stars had come down. Maybe I took them with me to college, but there were faint outlines where they used to be. Mom was doing better then, but I remember catching glimpses of her failing age, somewhere underneath all her waning sturdiness. I remember the train ride back wondering when I would get the call. Would a neighbor find her? What happens when someone dies and everyone they love is so far away? I don't mind thoughts like that. They feel natural to an anxious mind. But I understand that maybe I'm warped by them and I try not to bring them up amongst company. Nothing is more of a buzzkill than coming home from a trip and crying into the arms of a lover about how my mom might die at some point. Anyways, I hadn't been able to find her online, but I had the phone book. I thought about her old house. I kicked myself for only ever knowing her family as her mom. I couldn't remember adult's name for the life of me. My mom was no help either. You remember that girl I spent all that time with as a kid? Nope, she said. I remember you spending a lot of time in your room watching the Weather Channel and crying about tornadoes that would never happen. I don't remember that. It was when we first moved, she said. First bought this house. The carpet wasn't in the living room yet, so you just rolled back and forth on my old computer chair and watched the Weather Channel. You were obsessed. I still don't remember it. But then again, my mom doesn't remember so many little things either. Like when the girl cut my hair short, like a boy's. I was the dad that day. My mom yelled at me. I don't want people thinking my daughter is a faggot, she said. I remember that, but Mom doesn't. I'd never say anything like that, she says. I was 30 years old and trying to write this book, and that's when Dad died. I spoke at his funeral, but don't remember anything I said. Something about he loved me in his own way or whatever. Which maybe isn't fair. I think we had a good relationship for the last few years of his life. But it was as colleagues, almost. Maybe acquaintances. We both liked walking slowly through bookstores, looking for just the right book. So we'd do that every so often. Maybe twice a year. His birthday or mine. And maybe Christmas. We'd do that and talk about what we read, and I'd wonder if this was as good as it got as far as relationships with a father go. At least he never called me a faggot. Understandably, the book died then too. The memories of that place, these memories of her, just slipped away. The phone book was left in my apartment and survived a few moves and a few relationships, and my mother getting worse, and memories coming and going, and nightmares. I cried about my father once or twice. Mom would call to cry. She'd lament that she was a bad parent, and she should have been better, and I'd tell her that everything's fine. Everything's good. Everything's good, and I'm in love. I loved Dad. I love her. Everything's fine. Parachute. There was a gap in the world. It existed under her sheets, the ones that clung to her bed. The edges were elastic and stretchy to hug the corners of the mattress. That makes sure we don't accidentally fall in, she said. One day we took them off and ran into the woods. We each took a side and waved our arms up and down, whipping the sheet up, filling it with air and dragging it slowly back down. Each time we did it, she'd call out, "Parachute." It made me smile. She said we could control this gap in the world, go in and out as we pleased. So many other gaps were controlled by the fairies, but this one was ours. As we lifted the sheet up, she let go and ran underneath, arms out, begging me to join her. I let the sheet fly up and ran under to meet her. The sun tried to break through but could only cast a blurry reality onto the thinness of the sheet. It was an umbrella in the sky. shading us from our world. "Hold my hand," she said, and away we went. Pigs in the Pen. This game is played with a bouncy ball and a handful of jacks, or caltrops. The number of players depends on the number of people present. A fairy will call for this game when it is hungry or in need of new pets. It challenges one person present, while all the rest become pigs. The fairy produces one jack per pig and places them all on the ground, handing the ball over to the challenged player. Their goal is to bounce the ball, grab as many jacks as they can, and catch the ball. Failure to catch the ball means none of the jacks count as being picked up. The jacks that are picked up represent the number of people who will be turned back into humans. The jacks left on the ground remain pigs and belong to the fairy. Pocket change. She was walking with a goblin one day. I trailed slightly behind, afraid of the creature's child eyes. It was taking us somewhere in the woods, a place where the canopy grew thick and the sun ran away. The goblin said something about my tasty liver. I didn't know what a liver was, only that it was inside my body. "All right," she said, and stuffed her hands into her pockets. "Guess how many coins are in my pockets, and you can have her liver. Guess wrong and let us go." The goblin smiled, teeth slick with gruel. He agreed and crawled on all fours, sniffing at her pockets. His nail-like fingers scratched at her wrists, but she stood still, eyes on me. "It's okay," she mouthed to me. "3," the goblin snarled. It stood on horse legs and licked its lips. "Is that all?" "Well, yes. I don't know. 4? "You have to make the guess, goblin," she said. "Then 4. I guess 4 coins in your pocket." He scratched at the vein in his neck. She pulled both hands from her pockets and turned them over. The left was empty except for a baby dust bunny that hopped away into the wind. The right held 4 circles. "Yippee!" The goblin jumped and punched the air. It snorted a big lungful of air and spun to face me. "I'm so hungry." "Not so fast, goblin," she said. It turned back to her, and I stared, frightened, at her outstretched palm. "You said 4. There are only 3 coins here, and 1 button." "But," the goblin started. "It's yours, by the way." She handed the goblin the button. It fit on his vest pocket. Red Rover. This game is played by a group of humans. A fairy divides them into 2 groups and they line up 10 feet apart, linking arms to form a fence. The fairy chooses a group to go first and taps one of their players on the shoulder. That player must say, Red Rover, send insert name right over," naming someone from the other group. That player breaks free from their own group and rushes towards the other, attempting to break through the fence. If they succeed, they can take one member of the fence back to their own group, growing their numbers. If they fail, they join the other group, becoming part of their fence. The groups go back and forth like this until one team is left with a single player. The fairy then claims that person as their prize. Rock, paper, scissors. This game is played between a fairy and a person. The fairy will chant Ro-Sham-Bo, and on Bo, both players present one of 3 shapes made with their hand. Rock, a closed fist, paper, flat palm, or scissors, pointer and middle fingers extended as a V. Rock beats scissors, paper covers rock, scissors cuts paper. If both players make the same shape, it's a draw and the game is played again. Sometimes a loser will call for a best of 3, meaning that you continue to play until one player has 2 wins. It's considered good sportsmanship to allow the loser this concession, even if you won fair and square and don't want to risk it. Simon says, in this game, one fairy challenges at least 2 humans. The humans can stand wherever they like, so long as they can see and hear the fairy. This can be played at any time of day, in any location, even in dreams. The fairy then gives orders that the human must follow. things like jump up and down or roll around like a bug. But for the orders to count, the fairy must say, "Simon says," before the order. So, "Simon says roll around like a bug" is an order, but just saying roll around like a bug is not. If a player listens to an order that doesn't begin with "Simon says," then they lose. If a player fails to perform an order that begins with "Simon says," then they lose. It is possible for all humans to lose this game. The only way for a human to win is for that human to be the last one standing. If there is only one human and one fairy left, the game is considered over and the human wins. Snake Eyes. A fairy challenges a human to a game of snake eyes and produces their own pair of six-sided dice. The human can do whatever they need to confirm the dice are fair. They can take as long as they like to do this. The fairy must also produce an even or contained rolling space for the human to play. The human performs any superstitious rituals they need and then rolls the dice. If both dice come up 1, that's a snake eyes, and you win. If the result is anything else, the human loses and must gather a real pair of snake eyes for the fairy. Common dice rituals involve blowing on the dice, shaking them for an extended period, saying "no whammies, no whammies," claiming that you need a new pair of shoes, and praying to the god of the bones through intricate chalk drawings on the body. Stacking things. This game is played between a fairy and any number of humans. Starting with the youngest, each human places an object, one on top of another. The last person to stack an object before the tower falls is the loser. The fairy takes them as their prize. Optional rule. Each human can stack their own individual tower, but if multiple towers collapse during the same round of stacking, they each lose. Statues. This is played between a fairy and a group of humans. The humans line up 50 feet from the fairy and cannot move. The game begins when the fairy calls out "Watcher," and the humans are allowed to move. The human's goal is to cross the 50 feet and reach the fairy, but at any time, the fairy can call out statues and the humans must freeze in place. Any human who moves while statues is called is removed from the game. If no humans reach the fairy wins. Stone skipping. This game is played between a fairy and any number of humans and must be played at a body of water, like a river, pond, or lake. Each participant gets one attempt to get the most skips with a hand-picked rock. Tabby, Tabby, Tabby Cat. This game is rather fun. One of my favorites. She and I would play it when we wandered the neighborhood on our bikes. "Tabby, Tabby, Tabby Cat," she called. Come out wherever you are." I'd say, no, not a tabby cat, but a, and fill in the blank with whatever cat I thought we might see next. She was right, though. It was always a tabby cat. When we moved into town, we almost stationed ourselves in the Kingdom of Brick Roads. That's what she called it later on. It was a small grid of houses from the 70s and 80s with unpaved roads, just tiles of brick and tall curbs. It rested on the other side of the tracks. "It falls between the two towns," my mom said. "That's why no one fixes it up. And that's why a lot of kids go to a different school. It's also where the old granary was, where my dad worked until it shut down and put him on the road. He'd come home smiling and we made good money. I remember those times because it was everything my mom had promised with the move. We'll be able to buy more toys and we're closer to Grandma and Grandpa," she said, "and it snows much more there." I was so excited for the snow. My mom always talked about her childhood and how the snow would be piled up along the side of the house. It never got that deep where we lived, and even when I thought about all the friends I left behind, I got a little excited that maybe there would be more snow days. I remember the day she told me my dad's job would shut down. We were riding our bikes over the tracks to feel the vibrations of the bricks, and we stopped in front of the huge gravel parking lot. A train was being loaded with grain from a big silo vent. I didn't know where my dad was, but I saw his van. I could smell that smell he always came home with, oil or some kind of grease. It's going to close, she said. What? I saw it in a dream, she said. A fairy said it was going to close. It was going to close it. I didn't know what to think. It sounded like nonsense, but I guarantee I believed it. I believed everything she said. I ran home to tell my mom immediately. I might have been crying or panicking or just all snotty and incomprehensible. Whatever it was, she didn't listen or care to make out my pleas. She said there was nothing to worry about. Nothing at all. I thought about the snow and wished it would come. A month later, when I had forgotten what she said, Dad came home angry. It wasn't the first time, but it was the first time he was that angry. He broke his hard hat on the kitchen floor, pieces of sharp plastic scattered all over. He threw his safety glasses into the sink and cursed the loudest damn it I ever heard. Mom was smoking but came running in. She told me to go to my room and I did. I was a good kid, from what I remember. I did as I was told, even when it didn't make sense, even when it would hurt me. I was a good kid. We didn't have dinner that night. I stayed on my bed and watched TV until Mom came in. She was crying or had been crying, and she sat on my bed and hugged me really tight against her chest. She smelled like my dad, only older and more tired, covered in ash. It's not going to snow this year? I don't know why I said it, but it made her chuckle. And in her small laugh, I thought everything was going to be okay. Your father lost his job, sweetie, she said. We're going to have to be careful for a while. Around the house and stuff. We just got to be careful. Okay, I said. I don't know what's going to happen, she said. She was crying again. New tears. I don't know what we're going to do. Her arms squeezed me so tight it hurt, but I didn't stop her. I didn't know what to say, so the least I could do was sit still. The next day, Dad was up early making a pot of coffee. His face was rough with little hairs. He was out the door before Mom was up and never said a word to me. I made myself breakfast, and when Mom finally came out, she helped me pick out some clothes, and we drove down to the grain mill. I looked around for her, but didn't see her. My dad and everyone he worked with was gathered outside with signs. They were yelling different things, syncing up occasionally. Sometimes they'd move around and block a car from driving into the parking lot. Other times they gathered up by the docks to stop the trucks from leaving. I stood in the crowd with my mom, who held my hand the entire time. My dad looked different, angry and forceful, the kind of face I'd get used to over the next few years. Though that's a lie. I never got used to my father's anger. It was snap and sudden, unpredictable and fierce, directed. In those moments, he hated you and everything you were, even if you were his own daughter. All of that melted away, and you believed he was capable of anything. That day, though, we were all there to support him. It didn't amount to much of anything. The mill still closed down. The work moved, was all my mom would say about it, which didn't make sense to me because the building was still there. It didn't move anywhere. Anywhere but Lilancholy. We would explore it afterward, her and I. Park our bikes in the shadow of the silo and run around the inside. The company cleared out a lot of the valuable stuff. Vagrants stripped the copper wires and other random stuff to sell. So after a month of sitting there empty, it was like a wasteland. Mom kept talking like they'd demolish it, and every so often the city would park big machinery outside, like some kind of threat. But the building never went down. If you drive through there today, it's still standing. The only difference is that the parking lot is full of piles of dirt and gravel. The whole town is like that. Buildings closed down and reopened and closed down again. Left empty. Sold at auction to someone who leaves it sitting. The spiders own them. The strip that constituted a downtown during the coal mining days is just a house for owls and rats and the one hardware store that's never open. People from out of town drive in with used furniture, rent a storefront for a month, and sell as much as they can before leaving the lease and all the junk chairs no one wanted. She came too, bringing the fairies with her and leaving them behind in her wake. Every time I go back there, I'm awash with melancholy. I remember little things that were forgotten moments ago, I dig up old feelings that should never have been given second life. I always leave thinking it would be better to have it all burned down than to let it continue on like it is. Like the old coal mines, it's just a hole that no one wants to fill in. So instead, people slide into it and drink and smoke and die until it becomes clogged with death and that stench. It's just an old thing, and it holds all the secrets of the world. The Fae come and they take the humanity from everyone they can until the town is just a reflection of humanity. No more alive than a dead stump or a stone front porch. Sometimes I hate her. In fact, most of the times she enters my mind unwillingly, I get angry. I think about what she left me with and what she continues to bring with her in my mind, and I just want to strangle her. I hold on to her memory for as long as I can through the sheer force of my spite. She never got to see me when I was this angry. She never knew what I was capable of. She only saw me when I was meek, only a child. Sometimes I think she just took advantage of me, of the entire town. She came there with her mother, bringing all that darkness and just dumped it on me, and I've lived in it ever since. Writing this has shown me how unfair I'm being, but god damn if it's not difficult to let that anger go. Most days I'm just a person, going to work and trying to love my partner in the right ways. There's nothing to write home about. I drink my coffee, eat my sandwiches, and walk past tattoo parlors, hoping for a big paycheck on Thursday. On days when I remember her, or when I get nostalgic and think about childhood, I get dragged back into a tiny body that didn't quite fit me. I get dragged back into a closet that squeezes me. I forget where I am, and all I can be is what I used to be. I wish for harm. I wish for anything that will let me out. My partner will catch me staring out the window or into the TV instead of at the TV, and she'll say something to me. She'll say, "You've gone to Lilancholy again." But those words don't mean anything to her. They're just a story. And I hate myself for how angry I get with her. I never verbalize it. It bends its way into shame immediately, and I just remain quiet. Keep it all in. It's my chest of shit to carry, not hers. It's just a story to her. It will never be more than a story. Some days I just want to scream. I can see my father's face in the mirror instead of mine, and I can feel his anger. I wonder if there's something wrong with me or if it's just some family curse. What's the difference, really? It never snowed either. Never like my mom said. It never snowed so much that it went up the side of the house. It never ever was like she said it would be. And in my heart, there's a little girl who hates her for it. I think I deserved better. It pains me to think that this is Lilancholy, these old memories. They are learning anger from me, and I just keep giving it willingly. No matter how long I maintain a streak of present thought, I always end up receding into the past. She never told me Lilancholy could be more than a physical place. We found it in homes, in the woods, in all the old things that died around town, but she never told me that my brain would get old. She never told me that I could hold Lilancholy inside me. Maybe she didn't know, but damn it, she knew everything else. She told me so many things, so many little things, and all of them fade as they please. They come and go, like the moon is yanking them from me and letting them wash back over me at its own pace. I just want rid of it all. I'm tired of waking up scared. I miss her. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. Is anyone else haunted by their past? It feels so natural to me, and yet I look around and do not see it reflected in other people. I don't like feeling like the odd little duckling. I simply want to forget. For good. The Zoo. This game is played between a fairy and a human. The human begins by saying, "In the zoo I saw a," and names an animal starting with the letter A. The fairy continues by saying, "In the zoo I saw a," and names an animal starting with the letter B. They go on like this, following the fairy alphabet until one player can't name an animal. If they reach Z, they begin again at A and repeat the process until there is a loser. Thumb War. This game is played between a fairy and a human. They couple their right hands together, thumbs up, and count down from 3 to begin the match. The first to pin the other's thumb down for 3 seconds wins. They can only use their own thumb to accomplish this. No other movement or interference can be used. Tic-tac-toe. A fairy and a human play this game on a 3x3 grid. The fairy is X's and the human is O's. Each player takes a turn writing their symbol in one of the grid squares. A player who gets 3 of their symbols in a row, whether horizontal or vertical or diagonal, wins. All stalemates go to the fairy. Truth or dare? Truth or dare? Truth. Wow, loser, she said. Is it true that you pee the bed? No, I said. Truth or dare? Dare, she said. I dare you to eat a flower. Sure, whatever, I'll just bite your arm. No, a real flower, dummy. She stuck her tongue out, plucked a dandelion from the ground, and stuffed it into her mouth, chewing triumphantly. It tastes great, she said. Truth or dare? Truth. You're so boring. Shut up. Is it true that you... Did you ever punch someone? What? No. Not even in your old school? No. Everyone was nice in my old school. Really? She picked blades of grass and piled them on her lap. The sun was a brutal light, frying our shoulders. Did you punch someone? I didn't pick truth. Ugh! I slapped her knee. Truth or dare? Dare. Whatever. I dare you to tell me if you punched someone or not. Not fair, she said. Fine. I dare you to punch me then. You want me to punch you? Yeah, and not like a baby punch, like actually punch me. No, she said. Well, I mean, if that's your dare. She pulled back and whipped her fist against my arm. The pain was sharp and washed over my bone. I yelped and rubbed it, regretting the welt that would grow. Ow, what the hell? You dared me, she said. Why do you hit so hard? She shrugged and continued to pick the grass into a neat pile. It's gonna bruise for sure. That's all right, she said. Want to see mine? What? She lifted her shirt and turned to show me her back. A shape of black and yellow streaked up from the waist of her shorts. It was slender and raised, the skin rough and tender. Does it hurt? Only when you touch it, she said, then touched it. Poke. What happened? I just fell over, she said, on the stairs. Did you cry? What? Did it hurt, like, a lot? She shook her head and brushed the grass off her lap. Truth or dare?